Hi, and welcome to CMO Journeys, where we sit down with the marketing leaders that are shaping some of today's most innovative brands. I'm Christian Banach, and I explore the stories behind CMOs, how they lead, how they grow, and how they think about partnering with agencies. Ruby Tuesday is one of the most recognizable names in casual dining, known for its endless garden bar and renewed focus on value, loyalty, and everyday occasions. Edithann Ramey stepped into the CMO role during a pivotal moment for the brand, bringing experience from restaurants, entertainment, and large-scale consumer businesses into a category navigating real traffic and value pressures. Edithann, welcome to CMO Journeys.
Thank you for having me. It's so much fun.
Yeah, so we'd love to just dive right in. So you've built your career across PR, CPG, casual dining, entertainment, even theme parks. When you look at that journey, what feels like the defining chapter that most shaped how you're leading today?
I would probably say my experiences at Chili's because it was at such an important part of my career, right? I'd gotten to a place where I was in a more senior position. I had a team that I was responsible for, and it really felt like there was a lot that needed to get done and you had to do it efficiently and you had to work smart at a time where the industry was in a share battle. And so creativity was important. So there was a lot that needed to come from me and there was a lot that needed to get done. And so it really felt like I learned a lot about the leader I wanted to be, about how to deliver results. And that ended up influencing the rest of the choices in my career that I've made.
I love that. I love that. So I've noticed, and we love this in CMO Journeys, you've made a lot of nonlinear moves. You've gone like from communications, full commercial leadership roles. What's maybe something that you've had to unlearn when you shifted from, messaging to owning growth outcomes?
So messaging has one type of result and when you have to deliver traffic, that's another, right? So sometimes, how you execute has to change depending on what your end result is going to be. So what I had to learn from communication and being smart about how you talk about a brand and delivering the right message in the next job was all about, it's not about communicating. You can be very efficient at communicating, but if you don't deliver the traffic and you don't drive people in, you're not successful. So it's like almost unlearning what success looks like and unlearning one metric for another, because if not, I could have been activating and communicating, but if I wasn't succeeding at delivering the right metric and delivering the right result, which was bringing people into these restaurants or bringing in people into the amusement park, you weren't going to win. And so that actually is something you have to learn and unlearn as you go from one job to another. Every metric is going to be different. The end result is going to be different. So adjust your activities to deliver that result.
Sure, sure. Would there be, now that you know what you know, would you have done things differently in those prior roles?
Yeah, I've had to adjust that as I've gone. I think in early on in my career, I would have gotten so much smarter about figuring out what I was trying to truly do and then going through all the activities I'd laid out and all the tactics to make sure that I was delivering on the desired result. When I was younger, when I was starting on my career, I really felt like if I got all these things done and I feel like I've got all these great ideas on a piece of paper, then we would win, right? We'd have a big year, etc. And then what I discovered is that it wouldn't happen, right? Like I'd checked everything off my list, but what we needed to get done didn't get done. And at the beginning of my career, that was such a disconnect and something I had to learn that I wish I'd learned really early on. As I went through it and kind of understood, hey, you really have to be smart about what you get done and you really have to focus on the things that get to where you're going. And that became so much more of the success later. I wish I'd learned that a little bit at the beginning, but a good lesson nevertheless.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, sometimes I think you have to experience it to really learn it. So at least that's been my experience in many
For
cases.
sure.
Let's go back. Did you always see yourself in a marketing and communications type of role? Like, tell us a little bit about like where you grew up and what you went to school for, and where you saw yourself, I guess, at that moment.
Yeah, so much fun to go back. I'm originally from San Juan, Puerto Rico. So I'm having a really good week celebrating, the Super Bowl halftime because it
Sure.
was so much fun to see the bunny out there representing Puerto Rico. And I actually went to school in Michigan and then Boston, and I was going to be a lawyer. So all my classes, my undergraduate degree was in political science. I wanted to be a lawyer for the First Amendment. I thought it would be great to defend people's rights to speak in this country. So even back then, kind of loved the communication piece. It's just the lawyer piece that ended up changing. My aunt was vice president of public relations for Bausch and Lomb in the Caribbean, and she talked a lot about what she did and the work that she executed to represent her brand in the marketplace. And I thought that was all really cool. And I wanted to be like her. So I kind of switched gears and decided to go after public relations, all inspired by how much work she did. And she especially did a lot of work in crisis, which I thought was super cool. Like to be at the forefront of a crisis, which now you can pay me $1 million to want to work on crisis for our brand. But back then it was so sexy. So I have a graduate degree in communications from Boston in crisis. Like I was trained at the time to be able to handle any type of issue for a brand. And she was in pharma. So I thought I would kind of follow her down that step because there's a lot of crisis in the pharma world on a day-to-day basis. I mean, think about Tylenol, et cetera. So those were my first couple of jobs. I worked in an agency, which I know you're not going to talk about agencies in a minute, but so much of my love and passion and partnership for agencies comes from having worked at an agency and seeing what that side looks like. And I started in public relations, and most of my clients were marketers. Public relations was a component of that big marketing strategy. You needed it like you needed advertising, like you needed branding, like it was one more piece. And I discovered that I wanted to work on all of it. I wanted to be responsible for just moving the brand forward and delivering big results, whether it was sales or traffic or profits, whatever. Like I wanted to be a part of the bigger strategy. And so I leveraged a lot of the learnings from the public relations piece and with the clients that I had in the agency towards a job in local restaurant marketing for Pizza Hut. So that's kind of how the career began. And I fell in love with it. Like, are there days when your job is really hard and your boss is really tough and the results aren't there and you're kind of like down on it? Yes. But I never ever not love what I do every day. Like I found my path to something that gives me great passion.
Yeah, no, I love that. And what an interesting change of events, from the attorney
Yeah.
in the law space into marketing for super fun brands. When we first connected, I was a little jealous. I had a little bit like, wow, Chili's, Top Golf, Six Flags, now Ruby Tuesdays, really fun, brands here. And I'm curious, like in that vein, like what are some of the patterns you've seen across these types of businesses that you've worked with?
Well, so you mentioned this at the beginning about how I made all these linear kind of changes or that I, tried different companies. Um, for a while, it seemed like I was going to be working for restaurants. Like I wouldn't get any calls for anything else other than restaurants. And it took some recruiters to start thinking about, hey, there's something about how restaurant marketers think and activate that could really be helpful for other industries. And so that's kind of how I got into entertainment, which was Topgolf, or entertainment, which was Six Flags and all the rest. And I think that kind of begins to answer your question around how there really is a commonality to the brands out there, right? They're all just trying to engage the consumer, and I'm talking consumer based, but you could even say it about B2B. Like there's a consumer out there, you're trying to sell a product, and you have to figure out a way to connect to the consumer in a way that makes him engage back with you. And that's it. Like it's the same formula no matter what the industry, and what I've found to be the case. And so now I've got this little toolkit of things that I know work, and I will tell you that they work no matter where I'm at, whether it's the CRM piece and the loyalty and the branding and talking about the brand in a special, interesting way, advertising it a certain way, media plans at work. Like the toolkit remains the same because it works across any brand that's trying to build a relationship with a consumer and trying to transact. And that's the piece that I've discovered as I work with all kinds of interesting industries.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So you have a toolkit. I'm curious. You mentioned, I believe, it was your aunt that was inspired you. What is maybe a piece of advice from her, or it could be another mentor, an investor, a book, or something that you're finding influences how you're making decisions today, and maybe influences that toolkit you develop?
Yeah. I mean, there's a couple different things, right? Because there's the everyday running of teams and leadership that so much delivers on the work you have to do. Like at this point in my career, it's not just about me doing a lot of work at my computer and getting it done. So much is about working through others. Um, so I do rely a lot on advice from mentors around how to be a good leader and how to adapt your style to others and really listen to what they need in order for them to succeed. So I leverage that every day. I believe very strongly that you can influence the lives of people in a very positive way if you're just a good boss. So I spend a lot of time doing that, and it helps deliver the results I need. By the way, cherry on top. But on a day-to-day basis, I spend a lot of time just adapting my work style, being the boss that they want me to be versus the boss that I wish I had. So there's a difference in that. And then
Sure.
just from an everyday standpoint, we talked about it a little bit at the beginning. I had a boss who once gave me a really hard review, even though he felt like I did good things every day and everything that I executed was flawless. But he was the one that taught me we didn't make our goals. We're not going to make bonus. This year's going to be rough for the company. Everything you did was fantastic. You're flawless in everything you do. You do a good job, but you didn't get me what I needed. So how do you organize yourself in a way that gets us to where we're going? And since that day, it was such a turn in my career. And I spent a lot of time looking at my team's activities, looking at kind of what we're going to do for the year that gets it done and sticking to it. So one of the toughest things is, right, especially in restaurants where it's so pivot every day and a storm could come. We had a terrible storm 2 weeks ago. The whole business is decimated. You're constantly having to adjust, but you have to stick to your big rocks. That was something that one of my mentors said. And it's the Covey thing, right? There's so many things you can do. There's so many rocks you can fill. Work on the ones that truly drive the business, and the rest will fall off. And you have to make tough decisions behind that, because inevitably someone approaches you and goes, "Can you work on this too? Or what do you think about that?" And you constantly have to be like, "No, no, we're working on the big rocks." So from a leadership standpoint and from just getting the work done standpoint, I've gotten a lot of good advice about how to manage that workload, how to work with people that have helped a lot in my career.
Yeah, yeah. No, I think that's great. And I think it's a great segue to love to talk a little bit about the work you're doing now at Ruby Tuesday. You've really come into a time when casual dining is navigating value sensitivity, promo intensity, shifting traffic patterns. What is felt most urgent? Maybe what is those rocks that you're kind of stepping into now that now that you've taken on this role?
Yeah, I will tell you that, and people are going to think this is very strange, but I think it's so much fun to work with a brand like Ruby Tuesday. They've been around for a very long time. So you really have to be creative about how you market it moving forward, because it's been talked about in many different ways. It's been around for a long time and people have all these perceptions of it, right? The one question that I get all the time is, "You still have Ruby Tuesdays?" Like, and then they go, "Oh my gosh," because I loved it when I was a kid. So it's a brand that comes with a lot of love. It's just been through a lot, and now we're kind of trying to get it up in front and center in people's minds, and have it be reconsidered. So that's the urgency is figuring out how do we talk about it in a way that taps into that love that people have had for Ruby Tuesday for a long time, and makes people aware that we're still around and you need to visit us. So a lot of urgency behind retinkering the media plans to make sure we're getting to the right consumers and the right target. A lot of urgency behind talking about the things that make the brand great, like the garden bar and burgers and just kind of the things people knew us for. What's interesting about brands that have been around for a long time is they've tried all kinds of things, and sometimes they lose their way a little bit. So the urgency is behind getting them back on track and having just people come visit us again for all the great things that we offer. So it's been about 6 months, and we're right smack in the middle of that journey.
Sure, sure. Yeah, no, I remember you said it. I remember Ruby Tuesday at the mall when I was a kid, and
Yeah.
sitting down with my mom after a day of her dragging me around shopping. So yeah, some good memories. Certainly, this brings
Yeah.
me back. Um, so, in a world, and you touched upon this a little bit, but where value is kind of everywhere. How are you thinking about differentiating then Ruby Tuesday from everyone else, other than just discounting?
Yeah, we're working on finding it. In that there's still a lot of just price sensitivity and price adjustment that we're making on a day-to-day basis to make sure we're affordable. But as you say, that's not really differentiated. It's almost like price entry now. Like you've got to make it so it's affordable enough. So we've got offers that you can take advantage of through our loyalty database. We've got flash sales that we'll do to get you excited. We'll do things around payday to stay top of mind. Those have become almost like you got to do them. I am working on how do you create a value platform that is relevant, that is differentiated, that's not so much discounting. It's just that I'm giving you something that's really worth paying for. For us, and I mentioned it a couple seconds ago, the Garden Bar, with all of its great items and all of its premium offerings, is something people love and have thought a lot about. So we're working a lot on elevating that and making sure that, hey, if you still remember it and love it and want to come try it, there's some new news inside of it, and we're making it affordable enough, maybe through a bundle or through the right price, so that it feels like something you want to keep coming back to us for. So it really is about that. Like it has to be made up of still an affordable price. It doesn't have to be cheap, because cheap makes it somewhat unbelievable that that's a good thing for you. It has to be about it's affordable to me, but you've given me something that I want, that just is worth the money that I'm paying for. And that's a lot of the work that I'm doing now. And it'll live somewhere inside of that Garden Bar. Sure, other brands are doing the same thing, right? Kind of finding their own way. Certainly I see my competitors, some have been more successful at it than others, but they all have that like forefront value proposition that lives in the middle of their menu. You open those pages and you see it and you're like, this is what I came for. And maybe if you come to us and you get a Garden Bar and a soda, or a Garden Bar and a dessert, maybe you'll also have a little glass of wine and they'll get a little more check out of it. And that's the dream.
Sure, sure. I love that. So obviously you've worked in many places. You've got a deep experience here. I'm sure you kind of walked into the role thinking one thing. I'm curious what maybe is taking some of your attention now, or you're having to focus your attention now that you didn't maybe expect.
I think the loyalty program is interesting, and it's probably something that's being thought about across all kinds of companies. I remember when I was at Chili's, we worked on launching our database, and where it was then to where it probably is today for them has changed and evolved. But at the time, the concept was really cool. Like, if you are somebody who comes to our brand all the time, we should reward you. And then once you live inside of the database and you are part of our CRM program, how do we leverage the data that we know about you to incentivize you in ways to visit us more often in a profitable way? And I think that the whole thing has lost its way a little bit. Like, it got to too many emails, too much discounting, not really leveraging the data that you had, and not being as profitable as it could be. So there's a little bit of that going on with us. Like, we're sitting down and thinking about, how do we leverage this treasure trove of data of people who love us and are engaging with us, but like build it so it's value for them, but also value for us. And then it doesn't become just this thing that constantly discounts the brand, that it really talks about what's cool about what's going on Ruby Tuesday, promotes what's the latest and greatest on our feature menus, and kind of watches your behavior and reminds you to come back when you have it. So while I would have loved to have shown up and spent a ton of time just thinking about the value prop or menu innovation or beverage innovation, et cetera, there's been some work being done behind our program and making sure that it's working as best as possible. And I actually suspect that it's something that a lot of marketers are working on right now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I would imagine. So tell us a little about, you mentioned some of these different initiatives. How's the team like structured? What does your marketing team look like? Are you strictly doing everything in house, or you're looking at partners to kind of help? Tell us a little bit about how you're bringing this to life.
Yeah, with a brand that's small and mighty, and you're trying to be as nimble and as quick as possible, we're a small and mighty team at the corporate level, and we depend on partners to help us bring it to life. And this is a long-standing belief of mine. Any agency that works with me is a part of the team. And I know we're going to probably talk about how do you make that happen, and I'm happy to. But I will tell you, specific to your question, I'm so reliant on outside partners to come in and help me because I want to keep the team as tight as possible so we can go fast and we can drive as much revenue for the brand as possible. Having agencies come in gives you talent that I don't have to go recruit for, and it's available immediately. So that's kind of how the team is built. I've got a couple of people who lead my big projects, and it's small. I think in total, including our guest relations team, we've got like 10 or 15 people. But the rest is all agencies. And so we've got our advertising agency, we've got a loyalty agency, we've got an agency who works on the components of the menu and POP. And together we get it done.
Yeah. Sounds like a good machine that you're getting up and running there. So yeah, let's talk a little bit more about agencies. I know you've worked agency side and probably have a unique perspective because of that, as well as obviously partnered with many agencies, over the years here. What is your thoughts on, what makes a great agency client relationship?
Well, because I work on all these brands that are 24/7, I will tell you that I really appreciate when agencies are available to help me when I need them. I've had agencies that are very 9 to 5, and that's their prerogative. But for the restaurant world, having them being involved when we need them, maybe having to talk on a Saturday because a storm is coming and we have to shut the media off on Sunday, is something that I'm very grateful for. I also appreciate agencies who are organized and are nimble. So I've had experiences where their processes and systems are so complicated that in order for me to have media up and live, I have to go through these 10 steps. And so I need 2 weeks before we can change the message. That's unacceptable for me, right? Like, we have to be able to go quickly. So the more they create systems and processes that are fast and their teams are nimble, it's very helpful because I've got to pivot all the time. Restaurant, entertainment, any other brands that I've worked for, they're constantly changing messages and having to think about what comes next and helping me brainstorm. So it's very important for me that they be able to do that with me. And I also find that the very best of agencies suffer it with me. They get my sales reports. They call me before I've even had a chance to look at our sales reports and say, what happened today and how can we help you make it better? So true partnerships are important.
Yeah. So when you think about the types of agencies, how important is specialization versus, say, full service capability in your eyes?
I will tell you that historically, I've had more success with specialized than non. The full service agency is nice because it's all one stop shop, and maybe you just have one team. But I have found that if they know their media really well and they know their creative really well, and it's just the expertise is so strong that they can service me better. And the pushback from some bosses has always been like, oh, 7 agencies is going to soak up your time and it's going to soak up your money. And it's typically not the case. Like, in total, you don't end up spending more when you have specialized agencies because they charge for what's fair and they charge you for what they're giving you. And typically the specialized agencies come prepared to collaborate with others. I've had a lot of really positive experiences with being able to be on a call and having all these partners be with me together and they interact with each other. So the media agency will just call the creative agency directly and be like, hey, we need this sized like this. Or the loyalty agency will call the creative agency and be like, this email header is wrong. I've had media and creative agencies get together and brainstorm on my behalf. I'm not even in the room, and they'll talk about, okay, how do we make this message more powerful? Because sometimes it's not just about creative. It's like, hey, maybe we need to be on YouTube, maybe we need to be on this, and they'll work together. So I've had more positive, impactful experiences when I'm working with real subject matter experts that collaborate well with others on my behalf.
Yeah. That's generally what we're advising most agencies. So it's good to hear that. Curious to hear, like, what does someone in your role, a CMO, fear most when hiring a new agency?
The transition, like that gap of the early days, the fact that no matter how well you've hit it off during the early stages of your RFP, and then as you hire them and pass the celebration, if they got the business, that it just takes a while to get to know you. Especially on the creative side, right? Because it's more than just learning your brand guidelines, even though that takes time. It's just more like, how do you think about us? How are you creating things that truly communicate what we're trying to communicate? That just takes a while. On the media side, as tactical and as simple as once you shut the media off from one agency and then you go to another, your sales will take a dip because they're changing all the systems into their new platforms. So you stress about that. Like, it's the transition. And so agencies that can come to the table and say, hey, I'm going to give you a price cut of some sort as we transition, because we got to pay those other guys. You got to pay us in order to transition. I appreciate they come to the table wanting to help me. The ones that come with a process for transition, like I've had agencies walk in and be like, here's what it looks like when we take it from one place to another. We follow these steps. And I'm like, oh, like I feel so seen because they know that it's not easy. So it's that stress. Once you ramp them up, if you've done a really good job through an RFP, or if you have connections and experience with them, I don't stress as much about the other side of it. Like, it should work if you're giving good direction as the client and you have a good collaborative relationship. But that transition is really rough.
Yeah, yeah. I love that the transition plan is so smart. I haven't heard many agencies really articulate it that well, so that's a great insight there. I think we've made it so far without mentioning those two letters AI,
Yeah.
but I have to bring it up
Yes.
because agencies are stressing out about AI. Everybody's concerned, doesn't know where it's going to go. I'm curious from your perspective, where do you see AI maybe replacing agencies? Things that maybe you feel like, hey, we can handle this now with AI internally, or these are things that like we can't handle, like we can't keep up. Curious, like where you maybe be taking things internally, and then again, things that maybe agencies would be better suited for.
So I don't see a day where everything goes one way or another. What I'm experiencing and what feels really comfortable to me is kind of this hybrid model of leveraging AI where it's most helpful to me. So one of the biggest marketing quality of life improvements has been the ability for an agency to create all kinds of high resolution files, backgrounds, fonts, etc., and then creating kind of some base ads, throwing them into AI, and then the copy changes or the background changes or the message changes. But so, one agency's created all the assets needed, and then AI changes it all for me so I can keep creative fresh week after week. That so you still need the agency to do the base, and then the AI kind of came in and helped me. I'll get calls from the boss saying, hey, what if we changed our burger promo from this to this? So the creative can probably look the same, the burgers look the same, everything on the copy and all the price points and all that, the dates have to change. AI's helped me do that in a matter of 24 hours. On the media side of things, analytics, leveraging AI for all the marketing mix modeling has been fantastic. I get the data faster, it gets churned faster, it gets more accurate. So I still need an agency to kind of put all the inputs into it, kind of look at the analytics that come out of it, but speed and rigor and more detail is thanks to AI. And then on the actual media buying side of things, so we buy media, right, in the digital channels and in traditional. I also buy a lot of media through our third party partners, through DoorDash, through Uber. I've pretty much automated a lot of that through AI, and it's just faster. It doesn't require as many people, but I still have an agency that manages the whole process and they input it. So for me, it very much feels like it brings speed, it brings accuracy, but it doesn't necessarily replace nor bring stuff in-house. Like, there's somebody that has to manage that process and do it right.
Yeah,
So I'm grateful for all the benefits it has brought.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So such an interesting space, and it feels like it changes on a daily basis. Um, so you've worked obviously with a lot of agencies over the years. You're currently working with sounds like a lot of agencies. If you were to give some advice to an agency that's looking to break through to someone like in your role, what have you seen work, and maybe something that you've seen doesn't work well? Advice would you give if you're sitting in a biz dev seat?
Yeah. I I think that we have very little time. So when you communicate with me, do it in a way that's very succinct. I've brokered connections, and I've been intrigued by agencies who can send me something really quick that's like, hey, here's a quick case study, here's some information about us. They constantly want to have meetings and talk through stuff, and I don't have the time. So how do you package, your success in a way that's easy for me to see? I also have found that agencies that end up participating at conferences or meetings that I'm at have been very helpful, because then we can sit down and do a quick meet and greet and they can talk to me. So like finding spaces where all the marketers are at and finding me there has been very helpful. And I found a lot of new partners that way. So I think that it's a new way to have to reach marketers like me because we're so busy. And I actually think the number of RFPs and that whole process has kind of decreased. It's so much faster, and so much based on what can you send me quickly so I can absorb it and understand what you do. So package yourselves in a way that's easy for me to understand, and find me in places where I'm attending a symposium or places where you didn't even think about, like the Women's Food Forum, which is a huge event where all these restaurant marketers attend. Like, go attend that and spend some time with me, because that connection helps too. There's so much about the decision of the agency you work with that's based on trust. So if you end up just meeting as humans first, you could get there.
Yeah, yeah, really good advice. Yeah, and we're seeing that as well. The events, yeah, especially in the digital age, people have become really blind and there's overloaded, and
Yeah.
events are such a great way to make that connection. So, I know we're about up at time, but I know we've talked a lot about business. I want to ask one last question here. When you're not solving all the marketing problems that are out there, what do you like to do for fun? Tell us a little bit about some maybe your hobbies or interests
Yeah.
outside of work.
Well, that's fun. I love to travel. I love to spend time with my husband. I'm at the point where I'm almost an empty nester of 21-year-old twins, and they're, educating themselves and kind of launching out into the world. So we're almost at the point where it just feels like it's just us. And then it's us with our four dogs. I have three rescue dogs and one little naughty Frenchie, and they are so much fun. So just spending time with my dogs, spending time with my husband, and traveling the world is kind of like the best thing ever, and what I love doing when I'm not at work.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, sounds like a busy house with all the animals running around, but super fun at the same time. So,
Yes. Thank you.
Edithann, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate the conversation here. To everybody that's watching, don't forget to follow CMO Journeys for more conversations with the marketing leaders that are shaping what's next. I'm Christian Banach. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode.